Okay, last part of this chapter is now to actually graph the linear equation. So before we had a table of values, you had to graph. Now you're just going to be given the equation, and from there be expected to know how to draw the graph. We're going to do this in two ways. For the stuff out of the textbook, you'll use graph paper, and then we will do an assignment. We'll have the netbooks, and you'll do it in Excel, which is obviously a little bit easier, but you do need to know how to do both. So, first example, you're going to be given an equation now, and that's it. They could ask you to interpolate things, extrapolate things, just graph it anyway, or answer specific questions, but you're going to do all of this based on just having the equation. So the first thing you need to do when you're asked to graph it is create a table of values so you have points to actually plot. So just go with 4, 5, or 6 to get a decent range, and then figure out the value. So this is 6,400 times t. So just start at 0, and then I'm going to go up to 5, and then you just figure out what it'll be each time. So when t is 0, v is 0. When t is 1, v is 6,400. When t is 2, v is 12,800, and so on. So these are the points that you're going to plot on the graph. So then, using those points, you can plot a graph with time in minutes along the x-axis and the volume of water in liters along the y-axis, and you simply plot the points. So page 239, number 4, you're going to have to do the steps we just did: create a table of values, draw a graph, and then answer, in this case, just one question based on that graph. So you can get graph paper from me. There is a link on the website to graph paper you can print off, or you can always use Excel as well if you already know how to use that. So the second example now is when you're given a graph and you have to find the equation, find the table of values, enter questions based on all of that. So in this case, we're looking at Great Slave Lake, a maximum depth of 614 meters, and Brett's decided to check the depth and collected the following data up to 180. Now the key word here is depth. Okay, it's a lake. You're not doing it at the surface, so all of your numbers will be negative. Make sure you read these questions carefully so you don't get caught with that. So since it's depth, everything is negative. So along the x-axis you have distance from the shore. Along the y you have depth of the water. Going down, and you went to about 180 meters. So by looking at this graph now, you have to determine what the linear equation is and answer any questions they may ask you. So the first step of doing that is going to be creating a table of values again, and you can start right at 0. So converting those numbers into a table of values, so distance from shore is 0, the depth of the water is 0. When you're 10 meters from shore, the depth is negative 35, at 20 you're at negative 70, and so on. So this is all great, you have the depth. Now, when you're finding the equation, you're always finding it from a point where the distance from shore is 1 meter, and then you find the depth of the water. Make sure you don't use it at 10, you're always finding the first interval, which would be 1 meter. In this case, it's a little bit easier. If it's negative 35 at 10 meters, at 1 meter, it'll be negative 3.5. So it's an easy conversion. Then your linear equation, so as the depth of the water decreases, so goes down by 3.5 meters, you're 1 meter from the distance of the shore. So your equation is W, which is the depth of the water, equals negative 3.5 times the distance from the shore. So then just one quick example. The question just asks how far away from shore will Brett be when the depth is 614 meters deep? Again, we're talking depth, so the number is negative. So negative 614 will equal negative 3.5 times d. You want d by itself. Divide each side by negative 3.5, and you get 175.4 meters from the shore. And that's it. Once you have that table of values and an equation, these questions are fairly straightforward to answer. In your textbook, you can now work through 5 and 6, which will be the same type of question as number 4. 6 will be multiple choice. You'll be given different linear equations and different graphs and have to decide which is the correct one. And then 8 to 11, you're given the graph. Each time you don't need to draw one, and simply find the equation and then answer questions based on that equation that you found.